All right, let's get into it. Let's start with quarterbacks. Which one of you guys wants to go first? Wolf, you want to kick it off?
I'll give it a Mo with the Trevor Lawrence call because, again, guy that's probably going to get drafted in every league, but still going right now, right around 120, 130. I think it's a phenomenal call and someone I've certainly been gravitating towards throughout this preseason, and Mo's been on him all offseason. So I'll let you kick us off, Mo, with Trevor Lawrence.
Convince me.
Yeah. It's he's going in the 130s right now. It's come up a little bit. I mean, there were points in the offseason these last couple of weeks. You could get him as low as 150 in these home league drafts. So people are just not wanting to buy into Trevor Lawrence this year. But for me, he's the perfect punt QB. You don't get any of those guys in the top 10. So you might as well just wait until the middle to late rounds and you grab Trevor Lawrence here. And I just don't know why people are waiting to draft him until the QB 16. I mean, he's coming off a season where he was the QB 13 overall and the QB 13 in points per game. And it was just kind of a disastrous season, just kind of marked by what ifs and just overall inconsistencies and a bunch of question marks on what could have been in terms of his overall performance. I mean, there's just a couple of key points here. First, we just have a string of near miss touchdowns. There was that highlight reel, that compilation that was circling around Twitter about a month ago. If you missed it, go check it out. I believe Ian Hartitz posted it on Twitter, so you can go check that out. But it's just a compilation of a minute and a half straight of just drop touchdowns and near miss touchdowns for Trevor Lawrence. And it was just a bunch of big plays and fantasy scoring opportunities that he missed out on last year. And that another stat that kind of made its rounds around the fantasy community accompanying that video was the fact that Trevor Lawrence led all QBs in EPA loss to drop passes last year. And then the other part of the big question marks and what ifs is surrounding Trevor Lawrence's health. He dealt with a slew of injuries. Him and Derek Carr were two of the most banged up quarterbacks last year. Just in a span of 2 months, Trevor Lawrence dealt with a knee bruise, a high ankle sprain, an AC joint sprain, and a concussion. So if he was healthy last year, I mean, who knows what he could have done. And even while he was unhealthy, down the stretch last season, he still showed that he was able to be a top-tier QB. Over a 2-month sample size, so pretty lengthy, a full 8 weeks, Trevor Lawrence was performing at a high level. He was averaging over 20 points per game and was the QB5 from week 11 until the end of the season. So he's shown in stretches that he can be a top-tier quarterback. And I just want to be betting on a guy who I think has quality weapons, who has been such a high-end talent, just hasn't put it together yet. I mean, he hasn't thrown for more than 25 touchdown passes in a season yet. And I think we can all agree that he has the weapons and is of the talent level that can reach the 30 touchdown threshold quite easily. I mean, we're talking a guy that you're about to talk about, Geno Smith, has thrown for 30 touchdowns in his career. And I think Trevor Lawrence is far more talented than Geno Smith. And then just one little extra point here. Trevor Lawrence was just 10 points away from being the QB9 last year. I mean, two of those touchdowns that I referenced earlier that ended up getting dropped, if those go his way, he's basically the QB9 last year. And I think we would be talking about him in a lot different light, in a much more positive manner. So this guy hasn't really put it all together, and he's sliding down draft boards because people are ready to give up on him. I'm not ready to give up on a prospect of this caliber. I think this offense is going to be strong all around, and I think that he can be picked up as a mid-tier backup, but can legitimately make a push to be a top 10 guy.
Yeah, a couple things I found interesting thinking about this particular pick. First of all, I'm surprised he's never thrown 25 touchdowns in a season. I mean, that doesn't even seem right to me, but I'm assuming you've done your research, and it is. You're right. We certainly all agree he's got a lot more upside than that. Another thing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, I feel like despite the fact that he did really well closing the year out, didn't he lose Christian Kirk for that whole stretch?
Yeah.
I feel like they didn't even have him on the field, and I considered him their best receiver.
Christian Kirk went down week 13 with I think it was a fully torn groin.
Yeah.
So he was, for that, his best stretch, Kirk was out for 5 of those games. So, one of his better targets and just more reliable guys. And he was still putting up QB1 numbers. So, and it's not like I don't like to lean on the small sample sizes, but that was a full 2 months where he was performing at a high level. So pretty interesting to me.
Yeah. I really like the call. I mean, this was a guy that was going round 6, round 7 last year routinely. Everyone kind of had him pegged for that breakout, and maybe he did hit some hiccups for good reason here with the injuries, with all the drops and misplays. But I still think we saw those glimpses of the guy that we were trying to buy in round 6 or 7 last year. We get it for a full season. Doug Peterson, such a pass-happy attack will consistently be towards the top 10 in pass rate over expectation. You add Brian Thomas, a 17 touchdown score, very sure-handed on those deep routes. I think a lot of those end up getting converted this year for him. He's certainly somebody. I mean, you saw the preseason game. You never want to overreact to those stats, but 8 for 10, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 drives, just mid-season form, driving right down the field, a 9-yard rush, too. Sneaky Konami upside to Trevor Lawrence as well. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I think this is a great call. I think we were a year too early on the breakout, and now people are going to be a year too late, and he's going to really prove to be a good one. So I love that call, Mo.
Good job. We got another one coming up. We're gonna bounce back to you, Wolf, right?
Yeah, I'll toss up.
And this one, I told the Wolf and Mo before we started, hey, I actually got a few of my own I want to throw out. And then the first name that came up, the Wolf put up, was the guy where I was like, oh, this is where I'm really going to earn my stripes with these guys. They're going to think I'm so smart. And he already was doing it. So anyway, I'll just be a spoiler right here and say I agree with this one, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty crazy. We're talking about a guy in Geno Smith was the quarterback 6 2 seasons ago. That shouldn't be a sleeper unless he just completely fell off the face of the earth. And I know he took a step backwards, quarterback 17 last year, but that's still 7 spots ahead of his quarterback 24 ADP, going largely undrafted, 177 ADP right now. And I think he's going to push for the top 12 yet again, just like a couple seasons ago. Why do I expect a bounce back? I love this new fantasy ecosystem, this Ryan Grubb attack. I've talked about it multiple times, but coming over from Washington, one of the most explosive college offenses we've seen in a long time, top 10 in pass rate over expectation, aerial attack with 3 weapons going in the top 3 rounds of the real NFL draft here. And just look at those weapons, and it's just a seamless fit. You're going to get a lot of motion, deep posts, and vertical routes, mixing it around, going aggressively on 4th down. You got DK Metcalf playing the Adunze role, JSN playing McMillan, Lockett in the poke role. That's one of the best 3 wide receiver casts we've ever seen. And potentially, there's an upside if JSN hits his profile. I shouldn't say that we've ever seen. It really could be, though. It is the way this prospect was lauded last year for good reason. And I think it was a lot more Shane Waldron misusing these 3 rather than deficiencies in those 3's talents. We'll find out. But I do think Grubb is going to put them in a much better spot to succeed. And so far, it sounds like Geno, you read any type of puff piece out there, and I think this hype is very real. He's on a hot streak to start camp. He said Grubb called him an awesome fit. There's a really good marriage there with the skill set that Geno has and what we ask our quarterbacks to do. He's also athletic, and we look at it, what do they want to do? Throw it deep. Geno, 2 years ago, the number 1 deep passer in the NFL and PFF deep passing grades. Last year, number 6th in deep passing grade 2. Ultimately, he threw 15 touchdowns, was number 1 on just the 10th most attempts as a deep passer 2 seasons ago. And this offense is definitely going to be slinging it deep. We saw that in the preseason, multiple completions over 20 yards in his only drive in this offense, went 4 for 5, hit DK for a nice 20-yard touchdown. Looked awesome. But again, some of those puppies, and just to read a few of these quotes to get you guys a little tingly downstairs. Okay. Smith spun it on Saturday, demonstrating lightning quick release, elite accuracy, dropping deep balls into the hands of receivers, continues to shine, demonstrate excellent command, orchestrating Grubb's offense. Another outstanding practice, launching the ball downfield with great success. And then again, with Grubb emphasizing multiple times this offseason the athleticism of Geno. And Geno himself came out and said, really midway through the season, I felt I could have used my legs a little bit more. He only had 155 rushing yards on 37 carries. The year before that, though, 366 yards on 68 attempts. And I know that's not like the Lamar Jackson levels of Konami upside, but that's a good 366 yards and 36 fantasy points right there. So if we add another 400-ish yards, 3 to 4 rushing touchdowns to an improved passing attack, I really think Geno is going to push for a top 12 quarterback season, and he's going largely undrafted right now. I'm just so excited for any piece of this offense, and I think Geno is the cheapest way to get if you don't want to deal with the 3 wide receiver rotation and which one's going to blow up. Just take the guy thrown to all of them. I'm a really big fan of Geno this year.
I agree with the pick, like I said earlier, and your logic is pretty much the same place I was coming from. Just look at the weapons cabinet, look at his track record. I mean, is there a guy that you would have predicted less, say 3 years ago, to even be in a conversation about a starting job in the NFL, much less hey, pick this guy up, he could be winning leagues? mean, he was a walking joke, man.
I know. I love that. Like, I mean, I know
Yeah,
Dave
me
Kaplan
too.
gets a lot of credit for revitalizing him, and we saw him do it with Baker. Maybe Bryce Young. It talks about like some other names as sleepers. Maybe Bryce Young's the next one. But I'm pumped to see it for Geno. Like he's always been a hard worker, like class act. To see him turn it around like this. That is another good point, though. What's interesting is this is his contract year, essentially. Like they have a good out at the end of this season. So if he doesn't ball out, it's probably his last rodeo here. So adding that little extra motivation for him to truly go nuts. I don't love the offensive line. I guess that's one of my biggest concerns, but in an offense that, yes, they'll get it deep, but they also get people in quick hit situations to help set up those deep balls. I think he's going to be just fine. I'm a really big fan of him. I know. I know that was yours, Truth. And we can move on to running backs in a sec. Yeah. I guess the only other quarterback, and again, I don't want to give away all the sleepers. They're in the guide, $10, but I do love Will Levis this year. He's my second highest drafted quarterback. We've talked at length. I'm not going to go for the full spiel like I did with Geno here, but I really just think the marriage of his deep arm, which we're seeing a lot more command of in this preseason with Brian Callahan's scheme, they're just making it so much easier for him. This is no longer Mike Vrabel's run-obsessed attack. I'm a big fan of what we're seeing so far from Will Levis this preseason, what we're seeing from Brian Callahan. We haven't even had Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins on the field yet together. I think it's going to be a phenomenal aerial show. And I actually meant to make that point with the Jags, too, with Trevor Lawrence. I just love that division. I mean, I see a lot of bad defenses and pretty explosive offenses. I think we're going to get a ton of shootout back-and-forth games in that AFC South this year. So I'm really looking forward to those two.
One other guy that I will not go in depth on or anything like that, because you know how out I was on this guy 2 years ago. Then randomly I ended up with him on my team somehow. And I was just waiting for him to leave in a body bag every single week. And he didn't. But Tua's going like around 165 or something in these drafts. I mean, you talked about the receivers that Geno's throwing to. Tua's throwing to some pretty good receivers as well. Couple guys out of the backfield that can really burn too. I don't know. I don't hate it.
Yeah, his price is closer to the hundreds, I would say. True.
Oh, really? It
does depend on your site, though. Yeah, like it really does. There are some sites where he is going the 160s, and that's just a good general reminder. Like his composite ADP on Fantasy Pros is 110-ish. Like Yahoo, he might be going real high. ESPN, I forget which one, but you're right. He is going way too low on some sites. So certainly, yeah, the weapons are there for him to make a splash. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.